In a small, forgotten town called Nevsky, among dilapidated houses and crooked fences, lived a young man named Artem. At the age of 20, he had already experienced the joys and sorrows of life, but his existence remained dull and monotonous. Every day he worked in the local library, and his evenings were spent reading books about adventures in uncharted worlds. However, one day, his life was shattered by a discovery that would lead to a horrifying and mysterious adventure. It all began in the library, when an odd visitor, an old man in a tattered coat, left a chest behind. Artem opened it, unaware that his actions would have terrible consequences. Inside lay an ancient artifact, a black amulet inscribed with runes, which felt unusually cold to the touch. The young man experienced an inexplicable attraction to the object and, without thinking, took it home with him. From that moment, Artem's life began to change. At first, the changes were subtle. But soon he started to notice strange occurrences. Doors would lock by themselves, footsteps echoed in his empty apartment, and he would see reflections in the mirror that didn't belong to his physical form. Artem tried to ignore these happenings, but each day his fear grew stronger. At night, he was haunted by terrifying dreams. He saw otherworldly beings with bottomless black eyes whispering his name. In one such dream, he found himself surrounded by a dance of ghosts, their hands reaching out for him, trying to grab him and drag him into the darkness. Artem woke up in a cold sweat, his heart racing as if it were trying to escape from his chest. Soon, he decided that the artifact was bringing him misfortune, and he tried to rid himself of it. He buried the amulet in the center of an old park, hoping this would protect him from the evil forces. However, as he would soon learn, this only made things worse. Shadows began to follow him everywhere. Each morning, he found objects on his windowsill that he was certain he hadn't placed there: shards of mirrors, dried flowers, and terrifying drawings depicting his own face twisted in a deathly scream. One day, determined that he could no longer hide from his fears, Artem visited an old sorceress living on the outskirts of town. She was known for her knowledge of magic and otherworldly forces. The sorceress listened intently to his story and, looking at the amulet, said, "This item is cursed. It belonged to dark spirits who sought a victim. Now they sense your presence and will not let you go." Artem felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He asked her what he needed to do to rid himself of the curse. "There is only one way," she replied. "You must return the amulet to where you found it and perform a cleansing ritual. But be cautious, spirits will try to stop you." Returning home, Artem, now restless, prepared for his final step. The sky over Nevsky darkened, and the wind began to howl as if forewarning him of the danger. With the amulet, wrapped in a piece of black cloth, clutched tightly in his hand, he set out. The road to the library seemed endless. As he walked, he felt a cold wind pressing against him, and it seemed he was not alone. Suddenly, he heard whispers calling his name. Fear gripped him, and he quickened his pace, but the shadows, seemingly following him, grew and multiplied. When Artem finally reached the library, he felt as though his strength was fading. The door creaked open, and he stepped into the dark hall, illuminated only by the dim light of the lanterns. Inside, the place was deserted. Everything seemed frozen in anticipation. His heart raced as he approached the chest where he had found the artifact. He placed the amulet back inside and squeezed his hands in prayer, trying to focus. In that moment, the walls of the library seemed to tremble, and distant screams echoed around him. For a moment, Artem closed his eyes, and suddenly, a multitude of faces appeared before him, distorted, with empty eyes. They stared at him, as if wishing to take vengeance. He screamed, but the voice caught in his throat. Fear engulfed him. "I release you," he shouted, trying to convince himself. "I will no longer frighten you." When he uttered the last words, the light around him began to dim, as if someone had snuffed it out. Then a cold breeze swept through, and the ghosts seemed to start fading away. Artem felt an encasing presence starting to loosen its grip on him. He opened his eyes and saw the amulet begin to glow. It was as if a torrent of energy crashed over him, and with every moment, the light grew brighter. The spirits let out a collective cry, and through them, Artem saw the amulet begin to crack. "No!" One of the shadows shrieked, but Artem could not stop. At the moment the amulet shattered into 1,000 pieces, silence reigned in the library. Breathless, the young man felt as though a heavy burden had slipped from his shoulders. The dark beings vanished, leaving only a light breeze behind. He stood alone in the empty library, horror and fear dissolving into a light unease in the corner of his mind. Artem stepped outside, and the world around him brimmed with vibrant colors. Nevsky had returned to be the same town it once was ordinary and peaceful. He slowly began to forget the trials he had endured until he noticed a dark shadow looming over his home. It vanished the moment he blinked. But the young man knew that once he had confronted the curse, it would forever linger in the depths of his mind. From that day forward, he became more cautious with what he found. Artem continued to remember that secret, which would remain forever in his heart, and while warning others who, like him, might fall into the trap of dark forces, he himself remained in the shadow of long-forgotten fears.